Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our latest Lunch and Learn. Today, this is on the A Bed Every Night scheme, and it comes ahead of the launch of our winter campaign, which we do every year, raising additional funds for the initiative. This is a really timely session. I think as many of you may have seen the headlines today, which gave a lot of coverage to homelessness with a new report, new research from Crisis and Heriot-Watt University showing 300 families and people who are experiencing homelessness. And notably, they're suggesting significantly more than the official statistics we have. And stats like sharing from Zoopla, just 2.7% of private rentals available across the country are actually accessible to people with housing benefit. These are very much the tip of the iceberg, showing the sort of challenges that the organisations we champion and support across Greater Manchester are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Homelessness and rough sleeping, sadly, the numbers are going up, but that is not for one of some of the incredible work that we do see in Greater Manchester, such as the A Bed Every Night initiative, which is what we're here to talk about today. So I am Fran Darlington-Pollock, Chief Exec of Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity, and I am joined by Kath, Meighan, Niamh Foley and Brooke Jones, who I'm going to share a little bit more about when we get going. But first, I just want to say a few more words about Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity, homelessness and the A Bed Every Night initiative. So this quote is something I use in multiple presentations because it guides so much of what we do. And the fact that the moment someone becomes homeless is not an isolated incident that happens out of the blue. It's a milestone on a journey that could be prevented and halted at a number of junctures along the way. That's really critical. People don't wake up and suddenly find themselves homeless. People have experienced a multiple of different challenges, complications. Some people might have the resources or the networks to buffer against, and others don't. We have to remember that it is people at the heart of these experiences. And as soon as you hold this quote at the forefront of your mind, it becomes easier to start to see why we should really care collectively about addressing homelessness and being there for people, regardless of what that type of homelessness is. This is about remembering it is collectively bad if we have high levels of homelessness in society, and therefore a collective need for us all to address them. So just to say then a little bit about Greater Manchester and particularly Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity. From 2010 to 2017, these data that you can see on the screen are numbers taken from the annual snapshot count of rough sleeping. This is not a perfect initiative. It is one night at one point in time, but it is an interesting litmus test of the state of play in terms of rough sleeping. And you can see here that the numbers in Greater Manchester and everywhere, but particularly Greater Manchester, which you can see on your screen, were rising dramatically. By 2017, we had humanitarian crisis levels of rough sleeping across Greater Manchester, and it was time for a change. A number of things happened around then, including the election of Mayor Andy Burnham, who is our founding patron. And his political leadership gave power and potential to work that was already going on in Greater Manchester, including within the local authorities and within the statutory and VCFSE sector, to think about how can we make sure that we have a better response to rough sleeping, and actually that we move beyond stepping up provision when it's particularly cold, because actually everybody needs a bed every night. That was when Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity was formed, and that was when we're very pleased to see a huge and steep, dramatic decline in the numbers of people who were rough sleeping according to this snapshot count. However, from 2021, you can see the numbers have started to edge up. And this is really important to recognise. And you will see this when you're out on the day-to-day. You know that when you're outside, when you can see people. But the point is, A Bed Every Night does work, and the things that are driving the numbers of homelessness and rough sleeping in Greater Manchester are outside of the control or fully the control of actors within Greater Manchester. These are national policy issues that are happening. These are nationally driven shortages in affordable housing, truly affordable housing or social housing, national issues around welfare, around immigration policy, and the speed at which people are moved out of accommodation, for example, when asylum decisions are happening. However, in GM, A Bed Every Night does work. And we know it works because the pace of change when it was launched was far more significant and much steeper in Greater Manchester, this dark line, than it was in either the Northwest, the dash line, or England, the grey line. So we know it works, and that is why we are pleased to welcome these women on the call to talk more about it. So as I said, we have Niamh, who is the Principal for Homelessness and Rough Sleeping at Greater Manchester Combined Authority, who's going to give us that kind of regional strategic overview. We have Brooke Jones, who is Housing Project Officer in Homelessness for Rochdale Borough Council, so going to give us more of a commissioning perspective from the A Bed Every Night point of view. And then we have Kath, who is service manager in Women's 394, which is part of Riverside, who are one of the bed every night providers across the city region. And Kath is going to share that provider perspective. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now, and I'm going to open up my discussion to talk to our wonderful panelists. So, firstly, Kath, you work in one of the ABEN providers across Greater Manchester. Can you tell us what a night in ABEN means to someone with nowhere else to go?
Well, firstly, they're indoors. They're not going to be out on the street. It's going to be warm. It's going to be dry. They're going to feel immense relief. They'll have access to a kitchen, people around them, clothing, toiletries. They'll have a warm, safe bed. And if you're with Riverside, you can even bring your pet with you. So your dogs, your cats, if it's a spider, it doesn't matter. Whatever may stop you from coming indoors, if it's an animal, come indoors with Riverside. You're going to be warm and supported. And you will not move on until you have somewhere that's equally safe and supported and that you can stay there long term. And we find that a lot of our customers will sleep for days when they first come indoors, just the relief of knowing that they're not going to be wet, they're not going to be woken up, they're not going to be in any danger. And so it's a lovely thing for us to see, and it must be wonderful for them to just have that respite from the cold.
It's interesting you're saying that, isn't it? Like you can bring your pets inside. The amount of us on this call who might have a family pet or a household pet and the idea of being separated from them. But for someone who has found themselves without a home, that can be really important. So I think it's really good to know that in the city region there are spaces for people, spiders and all, as you say, who can join.
Absolutely. Yeah. You wouldn't believe the type of pets that people bring indoors, but sometimes that's their only family, that's their only support, and then they have us as well.
That support, I think that's really key. And actually that kind of comes on to our next question, because I know earlier this year we met some of your customers. Khadijah and Tracy were some of the women that we spoke to about their experiences in the bed every night. And Khadijah in particular described your accommodation as home away from home. That's so powerful to know those experiences and how much ABEN comes alive when you talk to people who are in it. It's more than just us saying, okay, it's not worth sleeping, it's home away from home. So could you tell us a story about someone whose life has been changed through a bed every night?
Oh, so many lives have been changed, but I think this one is a really important one, and it showcases just how well we work with partner agencies. What we decided to do here was to bring all of our support partner agencies indoors. Because of digital poverty, a lot of our customers do not have phones, they don't have laptops. These sometimes that they're not going to, they haven't got the funds to get to those appointments. And so we have a GP surgery that specializes in homelessness. They have a medical van that arrives every 2 weeks. It can do absolutely anything that a regular GP surgery can do, but just outside the building. We'll call her Jane, brand new lady, just arrived, only been with us a couple of days. And we said, why don't you just jump on the van and get a quick health check? It's coming up to flu season, maybe get your vaccination. There was quite a flurry of activity after her visit on the van. And Jane was quite unwell. She had been identified as having something really suspicious in her breast. We facilitated all of those, that really rapid pathway. She would never have been diagnosed or if she was still on the streets. Jane was successfully moved into her own property about 6 months later. And then another 6 months later, I just had cause to be at Christie Hospital visiting. And I heard this lovely voice and said, Kath, is that you? And it was Jane. And she said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't, in the broader sense of the word, you. I would not be here if it was not for a bed every night. If it wasn't for the project, I didn't have a doctor. I didn't have a GP. I would never have identified that the pain in my breast was cancer. and she was on her last radiotherapy session. Just something so what we take for granted that we can call the GP, just having the GP arrive at a bed every night project to see our customers on site save that lady's life. There are so many stories like that, but that's one that will never leave us. You know, there's somebody here still on this earth because of a bed every night.
That is a really powerful story, Kath. Thanks for sharing. And I think there's actually two things that I want to pick up on that. One which will lead me nicely into my next question. But the first bit, just to really emphasize, I know that when many people think about the experience of homelessness and rough sleeping, they're probably imagining one particular type of person. But actually, straight away, we're talking about women here. We're talking about different experiences. It's the kind of misperception that street homelessness, for example, or rough sleeping is just something that happens to young men. Homelessness and rough sleeping can happen to anyone. It's just the experience is very different. But the fact that that support is there, and as you say, something as simple as getting that medical support to someone, again, really showcases that partnership working, as you say, of a bed every night. It's not just shelter, it is what it comes with by having a bed every night and partnership working across Greater Manchester. Um, that is going to lead me nicely into my next question to Brooke. So, Brooke, I'm going to come to you as a commissioner of ABAN within your area, which is Rochdale, as we were saying. So, the sorts of stories, or like that example from that we heard from Kath, that must really resonate with you. I do know, however, that ABAN looks a little different in each area, and that the experience of homelessness is definitely not one size fits all. So, tell us a little bit about the diversity of experience of homelessness in Rochdale.
Yeah, absolutely. The stories that Kath just shared really do resonate with us, and as you've said, the sort of typical person you might expect to be an ABN is absolutely part and parcel of what ABN is for, but it's definitely broader than that. As a local authority with a relatively consistent group of people who are maybe your long-term street homeless and the way that people might typically expect, we do see a pretty big variety of uses for our airbend because there's a lot more to it. So it's more than just a street sleeping that people expect. We support people that are in employment who find themselves homeless after struggling to make ends meet. The stats that you shared, Fran, at the start in terms of the Zoopla figures, you know, in employment, struggling to make ends meet, struggling to afford the upfront costs, meet those requirements that are typically expected for private rented, and often they've exhausted all other options. They've run out of all those buffer solutions of different people and different friends and family to stay with, and we see people who are at risk of or do end up rough sleeping for the first time after what is potentially quite a sustained period of settled sofa surfing, not a long-term arrangement, but something that's settled and working. And as much as it's not just that someone wakes up and is homeless out of other things not happening, but it can just be one small thing that disrupts that balance, and suddenly they find that they've got nowhere else to turn to or no one else to turn to. And our ABN has got the variety of different setups, different provisions that really lend themselves to being able to support people to get back on their feet after something that it could happen to anybody. And a bit like Manchester, we do have a specialist ring-fenced female provision, and again that helps us respond to a cohort of people that you probably maybe wouldn't expect to be in need in the same way that you would think of street homelessness. We work with our trusted partners, and a lot of it is down to partnership work in the services that we commission our ABN into. They are the experts in this. They are the people that are supporting these women in particular who might identify themselves as having a housing need, but also women that are not seeing that, women that don't recognise that they are in housing need. Their experiences are always more hidden, more transient, and our ABN allows us to be able to provide that safe and stable accommodation. Our recent Women's Rough Sleeping census, just from the initial findings, does highlight that there is an ongoing need for the ring fence provision so that we can support more women. And this is still a bit of an unmet need. It highlights that there's a lot of diversity in areas that have not always been recognised as needing this kind of support. And I guess, as I've mentioned, there is, a group of people who may be more your typical expectation for ABEN, and absolutely ABEN works for them too. It's essential in responding to people that are part of other support services and may or may not have accessed accommodation. We work with drug and alcohol services, probation service in the borough, and quite often we take a bit of a broader look on homelessness and try and use ABEN wherever we can to prevent that person from rough sleeping. We work with those services, and if we can identify that having such unsuitable or insecure arrangements that someone may typically be expected to find, if that's all they have and we have ABEN available, then we will provide that accommodation. So whilst it's not a direct response to street sleeping, it's absolutely vital in our overall approach to preventing and rough sleeping and helping people recover from those different situations that they find themselves in.
Thanks, Brooke. And I think that's really interesting, isn't it? It's like ABEN isn't one front door that just exists in one place in Greater Manchester. And I know Niamh will talk a bit more about this, but it looks different in each borough depending on what the need is. And as you're saying, it's maybe not an immediate response to street homelessness, but to try and prevent something. And it showcases how much it sits as a part of a mosaic of work across GM to really help deliver change, which is something that is quite powerful and unique to Greater Manchester. And I think any of the businesses on the call who are watching this and who have thought about or are considering supporting ABEN Every Night, that is unique and that is pioneering, and it's partnerships that deliver the kind of change that we want to see. Even when we know we've got these numbers going up, we also know what would happen if we didn't have something like ABEN Every Night or the degree of partnership working. So actually then again, staying with you, Brooke, why is ABEN Every Night so vital, particularly during winter months? What do you think it would look like in Rochdale if we didn't have ABEN?
Yeah, so ABEN is vital because it helps us meet those needs of the people I just mentioned. We've got various setups and different provisions in the borough, which they all have the ultimate aim of relieving rough sleeping, but they allow us to support as many people as we can, whether that be long-term or intermittent rough sleepers, or people with higher unmet support needs, or people that don't need as much or longer-term intervention and maybe just need a bit more support to get back on their feet. We've got 24-hour staffed ABEN, and this gives us the chance to repeatedly respond to people who may need several different attempts or several different stays in accommodation before they're willing to work with us or feel able to trust us and trust the other services. And that's one really important thing, or really a key part of ABEN, is the flexibility that's built into those core aims, the repeated availability for people to be able to access accommodation, especially so in winter. So when weather's particularly bad, people who might not ordinarily access accommodation, they have the opportunity to do that if they wish to. And from there, we can then take that opportunity to try and engage them with other support. A bit like Kath said, we try and bring those services in-house, make them as absolutely accessible as possible. And similarly with the ring-fenced female provision, it's an absolutely essential part of our whole offer to provide safe accommodation. We don't like thinking about the situations women may be in if we didn't have ABEN, especially over winter. It's our rapid relief solution, but in all honesty, the dispersed nature of our female provision, it's not always the perfect solution. We do, need to keep learning, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. It requires increased levels of management to ensure that it remains safe for those women that are accessing the service. So whilst it is part of the solution, we've got some work to do. We're hoping to keep using some of the learning from the Women's Census to keep adapting and growing on that service. And then, as I mentioned, some of our dispersed provisions, they are just as essential in winter. Not 24-hour staffed, but from the people that I've talked about, not everybody's going to need that level of support, that level of sort of intensity and someone to turn to, but would still have support. It's maybe a little bit less daunting for some people to access than a hostel might be. And whilst the hostels are obviously a very welcoming place, there is still a little bit of stigma around hostels, especially for people that are maybe experiencing homelessness for the first time. And our dispersed accommodation allows people to still remain independent, continue with their employment and not have to lose more parts of their everyday life. We find that, especially over winter, the tensions of Christmas, the financial pressures across winter, increasing in energy costs, things like that, just of putting someone up, as sort of harsh as that might sound, it does lead to pressures, and people do find themselves needing accommodation a little bit out of the blue, more so than you would expect. So without ABEN, I think we would find people facing homelessness for the first time without any opportunity to be supported back onto their feet, and our ability to prevent and relieve something so daunting and dangerous and risky as rough sleeping for the first time, or relieve it when that is the right time for that person. It just would not be possible without ABEN. We wouldn't be able to respond as effectively as we do for our single homeless pathway without ABEN, despite everything else that we try and commit to. It really is a vital part of the offer.
It's really interesting to hear, and from that commissioning perspective, just saying how important it is as part of the offer. And to really reiterate that point, isn't it? It's like ABEN isn't the only thing that's happening in Greater Manchester to support people at risk of or experiencing homelessness, but it is incredibly vital. And actually, you're talking about all these different accommodation types, from hostels or kind of like maybe more traditional views of emergency response and support for people at imminent risk or crisis, right through to the dispersed accommodation. And what I thought was really important, and it kind of moves nicely into the question for Niamh in a moment, is that sense of continual learning. You've not just kind of opened an initiative and then been like, right, we've got this now, let's move on to the next thing. Not only is the kind of the GMCA and the local authorities and the providers all working together to think, how can we keep seeing what's the next thing that we need to do? How can we be progressive? At Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity, we're really proud to also support kind of ongoing conversations now to try and work out what can we do next. And just as you say, for women, for some groups, is dispersed accommodation right, or do we need some kind of different group support to allow those kind of needs to come through? So we're looking forward to sharing more about that from Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity. But for now, Niamh, let's bring you in here. So we've heard from kind of direct from provider, and I think Kath would love to come back to you in a bit and maybe hear some more of the stories because they really bring it to life. But and then we've also heard, Brooke, what it means to commission that and to see how important it is as part of the toolkit that you can offer in Rochdale. Niamh, city region level then, or even to start with, what exactly is the GMCA's role in ABEN, and what would it look like across Greater Manchester from your perspective if we didn't have it?
Yeah, so the GMC's role when it comes to ABEN is we're the ultimate commissioners, in a sense. We're the ones that grant local authorities with the funding to use in, and Brooke touched upon it perfectly, really, in a way that's flexible, that really meets kind of the local need. So what that can mean when it comes to ABEN is that you end up almost with like a patchwork of different delivery and the different ways in which ABEN's commissioned out across the entire city region, and that presents us like with a really unique opportunity when it comes to sort of learning what's working well, some of the best practice, and how we can like implement different things and use ABEN as a tool for some potential like test and learn initiatives as well. I think historically ABEN sort of operated in this space where it's been quite reactive to different pressures that have been going on within the system. So when it was first established as a response to kind of like cold weather, and then we've had COVID and the pandemic, and we're really at this stage now where there's been such a change in the kind of rough sleeping landscape and I guess sort of prevention focused activity when it comes to addressing homelessness. And ABEN's a really great tool when it sort of comes to implementing some of those things. Brooke touched upon some of our learning around the women's rough sleeping census, and we conducted an internal review into ABEN just last year. Both of those things have married up quite nicely, and we're taking some recommendations forward around building in ring fence bed spaces for women based off of our learning from the women's rough sleeping census. One of the key figures that I keep coming back to with that is we found that a quarter of women in Greater Manchester who responded to our survey had experience of homelessness accommodation before a period of rough sleeping. So ABEN operates in this space where we've got a really strong potential to capture people at that crisis stage, but also potentially before, especially when it comes back to that partnership working and getting other agencies involved to identify people in crisis and support them, or I suppose support them in the way that they need to kind of resolve that in whatever form that looks like. I suppose without ABEN, again, Brooke sort of touched on this, but you really would be in, I guess, a crisis situation when it comes to rough sleeping in Greater Manchester. It is a vital part of the system and support and delivery around homelessness prevention and rough sleeping prevention. It really sort of allows people to have that time and space to be supported out of homelessness and, have different needs met as well. I think Kath touched upon the fact that they have the GP surgery coming to Project 394, and it's different partnerships like this where people need that extra helping hand for those support services to come to them in place, rather than having to, take 3 or 4 buses or be met with different barriers and obstacles when it comes to accessing GP appointments, help with your mental health or drug and alcohol services as well. So it really is sort of like a vital wraparound tool, to be honest, when it comes to homelessness and rough sleeping in the round and across Greater Manchester as a region.
That's an important point, isn't it? Wraparound. Like, I've been really fortunate in my role to be able to visit a lot of different homelessness support services in Greater Manchester. And what I'm always struck with, particularly as I came into this space from a kind of a different sector, was the level of different support available. Is the fact that it's anything from GP support and specialist GP support, recognising the unique experiences and needs of people who might have been rough sleeping or been in insecure housing, right through to opticians, to the social work, to the kind of like tenancy support or, navigating employment, and recognising as well that we've got some people who are at risk of or experiencing homelessness, and that's in work. It's not just people who are out of work and struggling. It's so many of us. And I think for businesses in particular, looking forward to, the next couple of weeks in the budget, understanding what that's going to mean and how that's going to play out. It's important from an economic sense for a business, but so important for, providers of bed every night or commissioners who are working within very, very tight budgets and not able to kind of raise additional revenue in a way a business might. So this is really critical. Staying with you then, Niamh, and you kind of touched on it there, thinking about, GP services and partnerships. We know that partnership works, and that's what kind of like lifts Greater Manchester up in so many ways. Just that kind of the commitment to working together. So tell us a little bit more about how that works at a city region level, and also, and something we've been doing a lot in the Mayor's charity all this year, we've been trying really hard to spotlight the diversity of the experience of homelessness. It's young people, LGBTQ+, it's women, it's very, very different, very, very different. So what does that mean in terms of those different experiences when you're thinking at city region level and the need for partnership working?
Yeah, I think it sort of goes back to our learning from the ABEN review a little bit, and sort of understanding, like you say, that diversity of experience that's coming through the ABEN front door and how we can respond to that. And the fact that we're going to need different partnerships involved in that. I guess just to come back to the women's rough sleeping census, that's an exercise that kind of shows us the vast range of support needs that women have when they're experiencing rough sleeping, but equally, just as importantly, all the range of services that they're accessing support from. And so we really need to be asking ourselves the question around how can we get those partners in the room when it comes to all of these different cohorts that we're trying to support. And I suppose the kind of answer to all of that, in a sense, is that homelessness needs to be seen as sort of everyone's business, not just the role of like housing and homelessness teams in local authorities and statutory services. It is much wider than that. It's a health issue, it's a crime issue, it's a criminal justice issue when it comes to probation, it's things around like domestic violence. All of these kind of factors play into people's experiences through the journey of homelessness and rough sleeping. And those people might find themselves touching various parts of the system that those agencies are part of. So I I guess across the city region, we have, as demonstrated, in so well by like Kath and Brooke so far, each of our ABENs, work with all of these different partners, all these different agencies to kind of provide support around particular individuals, if they've got really high levels of support needs. There's something for us to do at the GMCA when it comes to joining up strategically across the city region. And we're really grateful to kind of have the GM Live Well approach. So that's a strategic initiative when it comes to sort of understanding how people can be best supported in their communities. And we're putting our voice forward through that to ensure that homelessness and rough sleeping is considered within the round of that. And how can we get sort of hubs of support that are accessible, flexible, and meet the needs really of those that are most vulnerable when it comes to this.
That idea then that it's in the community and it's important. So I'll ask you again on that, a kind of a number to throw into the mix there. And it's a number I often come back to from Centrepoint a couple of years ago, which is just youth homelessness. So forgetting all different types of homelessness, just think about 18 to 24-year-olds. And they estimated 2 or 3 years ago that every year youth homelessness was costing us 8.5 billion, and 5.5 billion of that is the lost opportunity cost because these young people are not in education, employment or training. Given that numbers of homelessness and rough sleeping has gone up in that period, and that we know the cost of everything has gone up in that period, it's probably fair to say that 8.5 billion is now an underestimate. So it is collectively important that we tackle homelessness, because there's a kind of, even aside from the moral case, which in some ways should be self-evident, but there's a really clear kind of business economic case. So Niamh, why then are things like this important? Why should we collectively support schemes like A Bed Every Night? What's the kind of the pitch from the GMCA on this?
I suppose, and I don't think I'm the expert in the room to answer. I think, Kath and Brooke have done such a good job in sort of summing this up. It's really just a vital part of getting people the right kind of support that they need to be able to make that journey out of homelessness and rough sleeping. It operates, a really crucial part in the system of this. And that's what it's about as well. It's about kind of like a systemic approach to homelessness and rough sleeping. It can't be solved kind of on an individualistic basis. And I think that's really the place that ABEN occupies when it comes to sort of the support offers that are available across the city region, really.
Definitely, it can't be solved on an individual basis, but my kind of message to the powers that be are listening to this, and I think that what we'd all agree on is like, it is solvable though. We can do something. So Kath, Brooke, I do have a couple more questions for you, but do you have anything to add about why you think something like this, why should we all care about this? Kath, I'll come to you first.
Hi, Fran. I have so many. I get really excited when you talk about our customers. We call them customers. Our customers, they feel so empowered once they're indoors. And as we mentioned, we bring the agencies, all the partner agencies, indoors. And as our customers just get more confident and more at home, because it really is a home, we will want to make this a home. We've seen that they start to say to us and to themselves and those other partner agencies, whether it be mental health, drug and alcohol, probation, as you say, opticians, we bring them in, and you think, I can do that. I could do that. I can do that job. Riverside, we have great, it's called the GROW program, giving real opportunities to work. We have many people who now work within Riverside who have been rough sleepers, customers of ours. And just a lovely recent one, we have we get beautiful donations of food weekly from, they're called Eat Well. I think it popped up during the pandemic, during the lockdown. And so on the boxes of gorgeous meals that arrive every week, it gives the name of the chef and the restaurant where the food came from. One of our customers had been, she would call herself a cook rather than a chef, but she'd been very successful in canteens. Just her confidence was really low. She'd fled domestic abuse. And she took it upon herself to contact every chef at that restaurant asking for just some unpaid work opportunities. And she does 2 days a week now. 1 day is paid, 1 day is unpaid. And she did that herself. She wouldn't have had the confidence. It's just the tiniest things that we don't appreciate, we don't see. But she would never have done that just from a sticker, a label on a donated box of food. She's now, she will have a career when she leaves here. She will have a full-time job. This is why it's really important. The opportunities are there. We just, even if we don't see them, somebody will.
That's a lovely story, and it fits in with that, you know, it's called grow, isn't it? It's like you are literally creating the space that people can grow. And if everybody's doing that, we have a flourishing Greater Manchester. Like it just seems, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. But Brooke, do you have anything to add on like why it's such a collective importance?
I guess everything that Niamh and Kath have said, it absolutely, you know, adds to the system, the society when people are supported through ABEN. It's, you know, supported through homelessness, absolutely, but supported through ABEN, those opportunities and the way that I think probably other LAs, but in the way that Rochdale have commissioned our service, everything is commissioned into voluntary sector providers who, you know, have these schemes. They are the grassroots organisations that know the people, know their local authority, know their services, and can really link people into that community. People leave ABEN when the time's right for them, into settled accommodation, but also into a community that really helps them, you know, carry on that journey through life in a way that they maybe couldn't see, and that might take a few chances, a few times, and you know, we all know of certain sort of stories, certain I guess public perceptions of people that are maybe never gonna, you know, and never going to leave the streets and things like that, but that's just not true. ABEN absolutely can achieve that. It can support people to get to a point where they have the confidence in themselves, they're supported, their unmet needs are finally identified and addressed, and absolutely thrive going forwards. And other services, you know, it's not a slight on other supported services, supported accommodation, everything plays its role, but this is at such a sharp end of the system that without this, you just don't see people reaching that potential. It's yeah, it's brilliant.
I mean, it's so true. And actually, I was thinking then, Brooke, as you were talking, actually speaking to another young person earlier this year who's been in ABEN accommodation, and they were saying at the end, it's like, they literally said it's not just for people like me, it's for everybody, and knowing how important it is to have a service like that and to see the outcomes. You know, it's very tempting to focus on the negative and the kind of the challenges, but what's great about ABEN is not only does it learn from where the outcomes are not as positive as people want, you still get these incredible ones where it literally saves people's lives. That's great. Kath, then, if someone on this call wanted to know what to do if someone asked for help, and I know a lot of us get this day to day, both as working in within homelessness, but also, you know, people will ask for support. If someone asked for help, what would you recommend?
There is so much support out there, but I think the best place to find all of the resources and the best place to signpost is a website called StreetLink. Very, very easy. StreetLink, all one word, .org.uk. There are 2 buttons on there. One is you looking for somewhere to signpost a homeless person, rough sleeper, and one for the rough sleeper to access that help themselves. It's very, what you would just give the sleep site. That information would go to the relevant local authority, to their homeless team, rough sleep team, and that team will go out to that sleep site and identify that person who is rough sleeping, whether that's Wigan, Rochdale, Oldham, Manchester, Salford. StreetLink is the best resource to access. If you can't remember that, just Google day centres, homeless day centres. There will be some in your town or city who can also refer into ABEN or refer wherever that rough sleeper needs that support. Streetlink.org.uk or Google homeless day centres.
Thanks, Kath. It's really clear. And thank you to Laura, who has just stuck that link in the chat for people. And of course, do remember you can simply search on the web for rough sleeping support and the name of the area you're in. The first number that will come up is the relevant gov.uk number for that locality. But I think it is really important. It's a message that we want to keep pushing. You know, if you need support, follow this link. And also, it's supporting organisations like Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity, because we're not holding on to those funds. We are getting it out via places like the GMCA and Rochdale to a bed every night. And this is money that's getting there, and it's enabling these services to exist, because it's these services that have the relationship and the support with people that can actually change their lives. It's that which is vital. So Brooke, this is my last question to you now. What is one thing you would like to see to make sure that schemes like Bed Every Night can be as effective as possible?
For me, it's the commitment to multi-year funding that I think is a real key part of how we continue with the learning that we need and continue with the service that is so vital. Our partners with multi-year funding can be, I guess, confident in that commitment and the ongoing funding, and that creates sustainability of workforce, which creates consistency in the service offer. Having the ability to create multi-year partnerships with providers also allows us to develop and enhance those working relationships with those providers that are then committed to the whole service delivery. We can keep learning from that. There's less risk of providers changing, service leads changing, things like that, and it just lets us learn and adapt to the changing needs and the demands that we've sort of mentioned across the various different speakers. ABEN started out as something that it's not quite now, whilst the core aims are the same. Having that continuation of funding and then the commitment to services just means that we can work in partnership to adapt where we need to and keep this going and meet those ongoing changes, demands and needs that we probably will continue to see.
That's so important, isn't it? I mean, from us, from a charity perspective, and Kath will have the same thing as a provider, but even the GMCA, it's like, if you don't have certainty on when the funds are coming, you can't plan in the same way, or you're planning for uncertainty. So anybody who's watching this thinking, you know what, I could set up a monthly donation to Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity, for example. If you want that to go to ABEN, tell us, it will go to ABEN, and we can provide that certainty for organisations who are working with people on the front line of the housing and homelessness crisis. With no other questions, that's going to take me back on to this final slide, which is our very first sneak preview of the winter campaign, which, as I said, does launch this Thursday. That link won't work just now. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm trying to donate, it's not working, it's because it's not live yet. But we will be looking to raise £32,000. Just £32 is all that's needed to cover a night in this incredible scheme. It's been 30 for a few years, so £32 is a very good bargain, and we're looking to hit that target. The last few years, we have been very pleased to welcome Together, who are a Stockport-based finance company who match fund the first £20,000 of donations from the public. So for every pound you give, you can double it. If you donate £32, that's 2 nights of accommodation in this scheme. So we'll launch that this Thursday, and it means that we can put a bigger grant into the combined authority, which gets to places like Rochdale, to places like Manchester, Wigan, Oldham. It is across the whole city region. But we can't do that without you. So if you want to learn more about the campaign, please visit our website. And if you want to get involved in some fundraising, come this Wednesday to House of Social, where our 24-hour run is back for its 7th year. And yes, it is a 24-hour run where people can do 5K loops of the city for a whole 24 hours. We're welcoming over 1,000 unique runners for this, and it is an incredible event, and it's supporting a Bed Every Night specifically. So the people on this call see the direct impact of those funds, and you've heard some of the wonderful stories from them. So with that, I'm going to bring this panel to a close, but thank you, Kath, Brooke and Niamh, for both joining us on the panel and for everything that you and your organisations do across Greater Manchester. It really is a collective effort, and Greater Manchester Mayor's Charity are very proud to support you in everything that you do. And thank you to all the businesses and people on the call who've come to learn a little bit more. And hopefully, when you jump off this call, you're going to get behind your Bed Every Night initiative even more than you already are, because together we can end homelessness. Thank you.